All right, we're kicking things off with Vicki McKenna and Culture Cast. Vicki, it is always good to see you. How are you?
Great to see you. I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. And we got a very interesting story and a lot of background. Kiel, city in Wisconsin. We got a couple of young boys who've been suspended and are facing a Title IX investigation, literally a Title IX investigation for misgendering fellow students. Talk about what's happening here.
Well, originally the parents were told, these are 3 boys, 8th grade boys, were told that their sons were being investigated for sexual harassment. So they thought, I mean, you know, what did my kid do to my kid? Molest somebody? Did my child, you know, lay hands? Did he commit a crime? And it took them some time to actually get specific information. They never really got super specific information, at least when I talked to the attorney for these boys. They hadn't as of just a day or two ago. They were finally told that the sexual harassment allegations were because the boys were overheard referring to a female student who had declared herself to be non-binary with the female pronoun she, her, etc. So you know, this girl had no confirmation that these boys were talking about her. She made an assumption, and that turned into a Title IX investigation, at least according to the attorney.
Yeah, and that shows you how out of whack it is. Contrast this to Loudoun County, Virginia, where they were so eager to protect transgender boys who identified as women from sexual assault in bathrooms, that they flat out lied to the moms and dads and lied to the own school board, to this, where we have a hearsay account of using the wrong pronoun. And look at how swift and how savagely justice is dealt
Indeed.
out to the offenders.
So, I'm not sure, there really wasn't any indication from the attorney. I mean, when the attorney can't get specific information, that's a problem. But when I had talked to the attorney, a woman named Corey Brewer from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and I said, well, you know, who pursued this? Was this something that was, you know, that was presented to an adult? Was this an adult that had heard these children do this? Was there anything else involved? She says, you know what, we're really not quite sure. We believe that it was the girl who had overheard the boys using female pronouns, and she preferred to be referred to as they or whatever, you know, a plural pronoun rather than a singular pronoun. And what I do know is that there's a Title IX coordinator, and it was ultimately the decision of the Title IX coordinator at the school to pursue an official Title IX investigation. And these boys could be in some trouble for this. I mean, it certainly would stay on their record, and it would follow them. Mind you, they're 12 years old.
You're suggesting to me that it's not enough to use pronouns of choice when you're directly addressing someone, but in your private or secondary conversations,
yes,
you must
these were
as
secondary
well.
conversations.
Okay.
Yes, this is compelled speech, by the way, and
yes,
I would love to have someone please explain to me how compelling speech is not a flagrant violation of the First Amendment. It is no worse a violation of the First Amendment than denying speech. And that is what these 12-year-old boys are being told they have to do, even in their private lives and private conversations. They are expected to be compelled to utter things that they don't believe, that they do not support. And that's where we are. And right now, at least this story got some attention. I wonder how many times this goes on across the United States where nobody's paying attention and Blaze Media doesn't do a story on it.
Let me go to the video because it's well worth a watch.
I received a phone call from the principal over at the elementary school forewarning me, letting me know that I was going to be receiving an email with sexual harassment allegations against my son.
Rosemary Rabidou's 13-year-old son, Braden, is one of the 3 8th grade Kiel Middle School students accused of sexual harassment, something she disputes.
He said he's being allegedly charged with sexual harassment for not using proper pronouns.
According to the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, or WILL, now defending the accused students, in March, one of their peers announced the pronouns they prefer to be addressed as, they or them. One of the alleged incidents Braden and the others were supposedly involved in happened in April.
She had been screaming at one of Braden's friends to use proper pronouns, calling him profanity. And this friend is, very soft-spoken and kind of just sunk down into his chair. And Braden finally came up defending him, saying he doesn't have to use proper pronouns. It's his constitutional right to not use. You can't make him say things.
Some might say or think that you or your son are against the LGBTQ plus community.
Not at all. Not at all. My children have been raised to love everybody equally.
Shortly after finding out her son was being investigated, Rosemary reached out to Will.
Title IX sexual harassment typically covers things like rape, dating violence, quid pro quo sexual favors, right? Really egregious stuff. There's nothing even remotely close to that. The charge against students for sexual harassment is an extreme abuse of the Title IX process. It's totally inappropriate and is totally being mishandled by the school district.
After the break, let's you and I dissect. There's a lot there. Let's not talk about it. We'll come right back. All right, back with Vicki McKenna and CultureCast Part 2. Vicki, so there's a lot in that video. Boy, oh boy, there's a lot. I myself have faced 2 Title IX complaints as in the course of being a university professor. Both of them were equally silly. I had actually one young girl, woman who considered herself transgender, accuse me of offending her and harassing her because the books we were reading in class were not books written by Democrats. She objected to the politics of the books. Rather than throwing that out, the university went into a lengthy investigation of me. I've seen how exhausting and expensive and shockingly just horrific getting accused of this is, especially for something as trivial as this. And even that reporter, right? You had to get in there. Really, how is this not a case of LGBTQ plus people and their allies attacking regular boys rather than the LGBTQ may not think that you like them very much?
Well, I'll say this, in listening to that description from that mom, that it sounds like the aggressor was the girl. It sounds like she was looking for a way to attack these boys because, these boys couldn't be convinced perhaps that she was in fact a male. I'm not sure, but it sounds like there's a lot more to the story that the school was not sharing, and that in fact the girl was the aggressor. The girl who demanded to be called they was the aggressor here. At least that's what that story made it sound like. Another thing about the reporter, though, and some people say that it suggests that your boys do not appreciate the LGBTQ plus community or whatever. What the hell community? LGBTWTF. I mean, are you kidding me? Community. It's not like, they're all living in the same address. They all have similar inclinations. Suddenly we've got this community that we're not supposed to offend. And what are the rules of this community? What are we supposed to all do for this community, since this community seems to be changing its mind about what it wants to be referred to, how it would like to alter grammar in the English language, and that seems to change day by day. So could we get, sort of a translation on what the rules of and the belief system of this particular community that do not seem to be hanging out together in any single place? Could we get a read on that so that we don't run afoul of the delicate sensibilities of a girl who's obviously a girl, not liking the fact that other people do not want to bend reality in the same way she does?
I love what you just said, and I'm going to go one step further. We know what this is. This is a scattered group of highly confused kids confused by idiot adult parents and by an entire system, a school system of left-leaning, primarily liberal women who have convinced themselves, straight women, who have convinced themselves that they must be the thought and grammar police for the one transgender person you have in your 1,500-seat school. That's what this is. There's no community. It's a cabal of nosy, pushy Karens out there in the public school system looking for trouble to demonstrate their bona fides.
Yes, and nosy, pushy Karens looking for trouble who act as political activists instead of actual educators. Another thing that absolutely boggles the mind is this, we just make things up. So we can just make it up. I mean, we don't need to use proper grammar any longer. You can use plural pronouns for singular individuals. And then if you actually say, no, wait a second, that actually violates the rules of grammar, you're mispronouncing. So we're making up words too. The new word mispronouncing, a completely made up word, and that is what those boys were accused of and now face a sexual harassment complaint because they mispronounced. Again, mispronounced privately, not even publicly, but that's what, and now they are on the hook for potentially, who knows what kind of punishment due to this. This is a violation of federal law, so who knows what kind of punishment due to this investigation.
I have to ask, is that MS pronouncing in the feminist way, or is it MIS pronouncing? That's a rhetorical question. I had a colleague.
Mispronouncing rather than mispronouncing.
This is how bad it is. I have a colleague at the university who came up to me the other day and said to me that if a student wants to write his paper or her paper in emojis, you should pat them on the back for being creative and give them an A. Because all language is there's no such thing as right language, wrong language. However people write, that's how they write. So you see how bad it's gotten. And I suppose we should at least show you the perfunctory response of the school to our inquiries, right? The KASD prohibits all forms of bullying. Evidently you don't, because you're bullying those boys. The KASD prohibits all forms of bullying and harassment in accordance with all laws, including Title IX. It will continue to support all students, regardless of sex, including transgender, change of sex, or gender. So you're going to protect everybody, but you explicitly don't list heterosexuals.
Right, and they're not protecting those boys. The bullies are the girl who made the accusation, the Title IX coordinator, and all of the adults who have decided to drag these boys through an idiotic federal investigation on Title IX. They're not there to support those boys. They are adults, and the power dynamic is so out of whack, and it is those powerful adults that are now harassing and bullying these boys. And if what that mother said was true, then in fact the real bully was the girl who went after the boys, who seemed to have a problem with these boys. But it doesn't appear that she's being investigated for bullying boys. Those boys don't have they don't stand a chance. They don't have a single advocate except for their mothers and the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. There is no counselor, there is no advisor, there is no administrator, there is no teacher who is going to stand shoulder to shoulder with those boys and say, stop it. And at what point, by the way, can we expect adults to actually recognize when their reaction is so far out of whack to something that actually happened, something so minor, and they've turned it into literally a federal case?